As of now, this is how our OpenAPI specification document looks like. So if you see here, there are no operations defined because our paths object is empty. As of now, we have only defined the metadata about our APIs, like what are the terms of service, what is the description, what are the contact details, license details, servers details. So these are all the metadata which applicable for all our APIs inside our organization. So you can have 100 APIs or 1000 APIs, but regardless of that, all this metadata is going to be common for all your APIs. So as a next step, what we can do is we can start implementing or defining some API paths inside our OpenAPI specification, and in the same process we can also learn how to define our APIs or how to describe our APIs with the help of OpenAPI specification. But before we try to understand the paths object, let me do some cleaning here. So as of now, you can see this document is looking super lengthy and complex. We can remove some details, like under servers, I'll just keep only one server details so that we can get some space here. And at the same time, what we can also do is we can click on this downwards arrow that you can see on the left hand side. So this will close that element. The same I will do for contact and license. And in fact, if you want, you can close entire info as well. So this way now my OpenAPI specification document looks very simple because I have hidden most of the information, but whenever I want to check or change the information, I can easily click on these arrow icons and accordingly I can play with the document. So now coming to the paths object, like you can expect under paths, we can define any number of API paths. So that's why for a minimal API specification document, we kept this paths as an empty. So that indicates to my Swagger UI tool that there are no operations or API paths defined using this OpenAPI specification. So now let me take you to the slide where we can talk about paths. Like you can see here, there is a screenshot which defines the paths hierarchy. So this is the screenshot which I have taken from the official documentation. So if you read the OpenAPI official documents, you can find very similar screenshot. So this screenshot is self-explanatory. If you try to understand, the very first object that we have is a OpenAPI object. Under that, we can define root elements like OpenAPI object, info object, servers object, and paths object. So servers, they have not mentioned in the screenshot because it's not a mandatory object. Now coming to the paths object, under paths, we can define any number of paths or operations or APIs, like each path can start with slash, what is your endpoint? So your endpoints can be like slash endpoint 1 slash endpoint 2. So this way we can give any number of endpoints under paths. So each endpoint is going to act as an path item object, which describes your HTTP operations that can be performed on a specific path. And under each path, which is under each path item object, you can define details like what is the HTTP method that your path supports. Like, is it a get or put or post or delete? So that's the information that you need to provide below your endpoint paths. Like if a same path is going to support multiple HTTP methods, you can also repeat those details, like for get, these are the details, for put, these are the details, for post, these are the details. And once you define your HTTP method details, you have to explain your operation object. So don't worry if this is all looking super complex to you. Like since you are looking at this very first time, it might be heavy for you to absorb all this information. But like when we are discussing the examples, this is all going to make sense. But for now, I just wanted to give an overall picture how the paths object is going to look like. So under operation object, we need to provide details like what is the summary of your operation, what is the description of your operation, so what exactly your operation is going to do, what my consumer is going to get whenever he consumes that particular operation. So those details we need to define under summary and description. And the next data that we can provide under operation is what is the request body. Definitely every API will accept some request. So you need to provide those details inside the request body. And after the request, definitely we should also describe our API's response, how they are going to look like. Under responses, there can be multiple scenarios. Like you may get 200 response, which indicates your operation is successful. you may get HTTP error code 500, which indicates there is some exception happen at the backend. You may get 401, which is authentication failed. So there are various HTTP response codes. So based upon that, your response may change from response code to code. So that's why under responses, we can define multiple response object against each of the HTTP code. Like for 200 response code, this is how my response is going to look like. For 401, this is how it is going to look like. For 500, this is how it is going to look like. So that's why you can see under responses, you can define multiple response object. And what exactly we can define inside our response object means definitely there will be a description field, and after that you will have a content field. So under content field, you have to give the schema structure of your response, like how your response is going to look like. So this is the whole hierarchy of our paths object inside OpenAPI specification. So let me try to revise one more time quickly. So there will be a paths, which is a root element. Under paths, we can define any number of paths with the help of / followed by what is your path name. Under each path item object, we can define what are the HTTP method that your API is going to support. Under HTTP method details, we need to provide the operation object, which will have summary, description, request body, response, and operation ID. So operation ID is something which you can provide a name to your operation. So we are going to discuss the same in the coming lectures. And inside the operation object, we have responses where you can mention multiple response object. The reason is you may get a success response, failure response. So for all these kind of scenarios, we should be able to provide multiple responses with the help of response object. And a response object, again, we have to define the fields like description and content. So I hope you are clear like how to represent paths, and I'm sure you might have some questions and confusions here, but please don't worry. This is just a summary that I want to provide you, and we are going to spend enough time understanding all these paths, operations, responses, requests, everything we are going to discuss in detail. So with this, let's start our journey of paths inside the OpenAPI specification. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.